Obviously, the meeting is open to the public and will be webcast, and any recordings will be available for people to view later through the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. As ever, please switch your mobile phones off. Apparently there is no fire test planned for today, and if there is, just run for Tudor Square. And the next part of it is just to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Mohammed Maroof, Chair of Economic Development, Skills and Culture Policy Committee, and if I can ask you to introduce yourself and then go around.
Good morning, Councillor Ibiullah, Netherage and Sharrow, also the Deputy Chair of this committee.
Hi, Minesh Parekh, Councillor for Crooks and Crossbow Ward.
Morning, I'm Councillor John Wright, representing Walkley Ward, and I'm a substitute member today.
Councillor Mark Whittaker for Stocksbridge and Upper Don. Thank you.
Councillor Henry Nottage for Hillsborough Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Denise Fox, Councillor for Burley Ward.
Good morning, Barbara Masters, Councillor for Ecclesall Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Rob Rice, Councillor for East Ecclesfield Ward.
For that, and just the officers on the top table here.
Yep. Right, Sherry Grant, I'm an Assistant Director for Legal.
Fiona Martinez, I'm Principal Democratic Services, and I support this committee.
Thank you very much. And item 1 is apologies for absence, and Fiona.
Yes, we have apologies from Nikki Belfield, substituted by Councillor John Wright.
Thank you very much indeed. Exclusion of the public and press is...
Yeah, there are no items which require the exclusion of the public and press.
Are you sure?
Yeah, so we do have a case study which we'll be showing for item 9. So at that point, here. So under item 9.
Yeah. Under item 9, I think we have a case study, and the reason for not webcasting at that time, the person whose case study this is has asked to be anonymous, so that we will then not webcast that part of the meeting. So moving on to declarations of interest. Any member declarations of interest? Nope. Minutes of the previous meetings. I think we've had 2 previous meetings. That's one on the 7th of July and the extraordinary one on, the one on the 7th of July, one on the 6th of July, August, and one on the 3rd of October, which was the extraordinary one. I'm sure members have read the minutes, and if there's any issues arising from them, then please raise your hand. Silence. We're okay with that. Public petitions, questions and statements. We have received 1 public question. A written answer has been provided to the questionnaire, and the question and response have been published on the committee's webpage for today's meeting. Item 6, members' questions. We have received a number of members' questions. Written answers have been provided, and these have been published on the committee's webpage for today's meeting. Paper copies of these questions and responses are also available. Thank you.
I won't ask a supplementary on every one, but I've just got a couple, if that's okay. For the first question, thank you firstly to you and officers for the answers, they're really helpful. For the first question, there was also a clause in the question asking about how the funds could be used. Did the paper that you mentioned that could be made public, does that also detail ways that the funds could be used? Has that been explored, or is it just about the revenue that could be raised?
Thank you for that question. I don't know the answer to the question immediately. I will get the answer for you for that question.
Second one, I've only got 3. On question 2, it's really welcome to hear about the support that was given to Abbeydale Brewery during their change to employee ownership. I wonder if that's something that could be turned into a case study on Business Sheffield's websites to show what we do to support employee ownership and a diverse range of business types. I think that's a really positive model. I think it's something we could talk about more.
That's an extremely positive question, and I think it's something that we should pick up on, and I'll pick it up with the officers on that with Yvonne. Yvonne's nodding, so yeah.
Finally, just on I've lost the number, question 6. So it sounds like from this we haven't done anything internally to look at the specific benefits there might be from 20-mile-an-hour limits and reducing speed in district centres for, I guess, increased footfall or the wider economic benefits. I really think that's something we should be exploring, particularly as a council, we're looking to expand 20-mile-an-hour limits across the city. I know in my own ward in Crooks, we're looking to bring in 20-mile-an-hour limit, and there's a question over whether the main high street, Crooks, should be included, and I think it would really help our arguments as a council and really help the transport team if we can say clearly that we think cars going at a lower speed makes a more pleasant shopping environment, makes people more likely to relax and spend more time there. We know some of those arguments because we, I guess, made them during the Economic Recovery Fund, where we looked at increasing how pleasant a high street is. And I think there's a piece of work to be done there that could strengthen both the work of transport and also improve our district centres as well.
Thank you so much for that, Councillor Parek. I think it's something that we really do need to do a little bit more research on whether there has been any effect of the 20-mile-an-hour zones, and I think it's an excellent question. Thank you. On to the work items. Item 7, which is on page 25 of your agenda pack, and it's around the work programme, and I'm assuming it's Ben who's going to be speaking. Oh, sorry, it's you. Sorry.
No problem, I won't give Ben any more to do.
Ben there and I thought, he seemed so ready to do it, so I thought, sorry Fiona.
That's no problem. Okay, good morning everybody. This is our standing work programme item, which, as you know, every committee I ask members, invite them to suggest any additions or amendments. So I'll start with that. I would like to also draw your attention to a referral that we've had from full council on page 27, asking that the committee consider adding to its work programme the establishment of a citywide nighttime advisory group. Now, this item has been added to the work programme, but it's currently under the items which still require a date. So it's something that's been put there in its early stages, and we will be identifying a date for that item to come to committee. Very happy to receive suggestions on when that should be. On page 29, you can see all of our new items, quite a large list there. And we've got quite a populated work programme now for the next few meetings. But as always, I invite any suggestions. Yes?
Thank you. I mean, we keep on asking about LGBT, and there's nothing in here to even indicate there's an update on what the situation is with that. And I thought it was coming to committee, well, certainly by this month, because the working party, whoever that was involved in, their work has been done apparently. So can we have an update?
Yes. Are there any officers who want to come in on when that could be? Maybe not.
I think what we'll do is we'll take that question on board and get the officers to look at when we can actually bring that forward.
Chair, just in terms of that, I know there's been discussions with the regeneration team and the implications in the area of development around Moorfoot, so we're certainly engaged with the regen team because that's one of the areas I think of point of discussion which has been raised previously at the committee. So,
thank you, Councillor Ola, and then Councillor Parek.
Thank you, Chair. In December, we've got 4 items. I was wondering, in relation to South Yorkshire Investment Zone, would we have some substantial update on that? Or if not, can we move that for another month? Because if we have less items, we tend to have more in-depth discussions. Yes, thank you.
I think that's a very good point, because I did raise that when we had the extraordinary meeting, that the less items we have, it gives us more time to debate them. And that's been quite useful in the last meeting that we had. And it's something that I think we need to feed back to, I would imagine, governance as well, to say this is something that we feel it might be helpful. Sherry, if you may. Thank you. Councillor Parek.
Thanks, Chair. I guess 2 points. One, following on Ibby's in December, we have an item on economic inactivity, the Trailblazer progress report, and in February, it says 25, I assume 26, it talks about DWTP funding extension for economic activity Trailblazer. It feels like those items are linked and maybe they should be taken at the same meeting unless there is a timeliness reason why they shouldn't be. But I wonder if they could both be February 26. And then just my second question is not a new item, but on Culture Sheffield, the update and heritage update, I feel like one of the answers to my members' questions on the culture strategy and community ownership was a really positive answer, and I wonder if we can get specific mention of the work we're doing to support community ownership in both of those papers as well, because I think there's a very interesting update on the Sheffield Independent Venue Alliance and the work the council's done to support community ownership there, and I think if we can pull that out a bit more in those reports, that would be really helpful.
Thank you for that, Councillor Breck. I think the officers are here and are hearing you, so thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Yes, I sit on the licensing committee as well, and I became aware that I felt that insufficient weight was sometimes given to the economics of importance of the nighttime economy. And I would therefore very much welcome a sort of cross-committee approach that the Nighttime Advisory Group could help with to encourage people to be aware of the economic development side of licensing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. It's something that I have actually taken some action on already. I've met the chair of the Nighttime Economy National, Michael Killer, I think it is, and we have opened up negotiations and discussions with him. He is prepared to come to Sheffield and work with officers in Sheffield as well. That was just a very simple, he introduced himself. I felt it was reasonable and respectful to actually talk to him, and which I did. The other point I'll raise on the nighttime economy stuff, and then I'll bring in Councillor Rice, is that the motion that went through full committee in September was a pretty straightforward motion that we will have an advisory board. And I've subsequently been contacted by quite a number of private individuals and said, where is this board? How can we contribute to the board? How can we volunteer to be on the board? So what I'm suggesting here, Fiona, is if we can bring that report as quickly as we possibly can, because otherwise it starts to lose its impetus completely, and people will then start to criticise us that we've supported a motion, but have actually done nothing to back it up with. So if we can do that, that will be extremely helpful, Fiona. Councillor Rice.
No, I'd just like to provide comment, given that I was the one that proposed the motion to full council. The intention with the nighttime advisory panel, whatever name they decide to give themselves when it does come through, the intention was always for it to be a industry-led endeavour. I have had meetings, I'm having meetings and informal conversations with business owners and those involved in the nighttime economy across a number of sectors. And so I am aware of the issues that they have, but I am not an expert on them. So my intention with it was for things like the regulatory framework around the nighttime economy, noise, but also expansion into things like planning, policing, safety, everything like that, that it will be very much driven by the members themselves as to what they think the kind of most beneficial changes in the immediacy could be made. So I think on the terms of licensing, I agree it will be, from the conversation I've had, a major factor, but I'm glad that you, across the other side of the horseshoe, is that what we call these, are aware that there are limitations in the space that need dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Perrick.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from this conversation, I think it'll be obviously there's a need to do it quickly. I think it'll be helpful if we could have a full committee briefing where we discuss the terms of reference and membership of that group. I think it'll be really helpful if we could have as wide a range of the members of the nighttime economy, from grassroots and smaller organisations to the big players involved in that. And on the name as well, I think we should be quite selective about the name we use because of the abbreviations. I think NAG and NAP, neither of which are that great for a nighttime economy group, and I I'm sure there's a better one we can find.
I absolutely agree with you. We're agreeing too much today, aren't we, really? It's not. But I think it's something that we all are quite committed to across the board, that the nighttime economy is something that we really need to work on. And your suggestion is absolutely the way it's going to be going. I will reach out to Yvonne at some stage after this meeting, and obviously it's going to be minuted as well, that we follow up on this as quickly as we can. Without labouring the point, I'm very keen for this to happen because there's been so much narrative around this for many months now, and I think the businesses are reaching out to us, which is a good thing, and I think members are pretty much all supportive of it as well. So it's something that we can actually do that could be quite positive for this city. Councillor Masters.
Yeah, Rob's actually covered what most of I was going to say, but as a seconder for the motion, basically the motion came from businesses approaching us with their concerns, and one of them is the cross-cutting nature of the business, which is licensing as well as planning, which is what Rob covered. So yeah, it's amazing how much interest it's attracted from and it's not just nighttime economy, it's actually wider than that. So it'd be really interesting to have a full briefing about exactly what the hospitality, the music industry actually require, the wider industry, not what is obviously springs to mind.
There's clearly a passion amongst members, so we shouldn't waste that, should we really? We might as well push ahead with this, so we will have those conversations and let's make it happen. Any other questions on the work programme? Ben?
Just in terms of nighttime economy, I'm sure Yvonne, Business Sheffield, will engage with various different departments within the council, so it's very much a collective position rather than picking off one department at a time. That seems essential. Just in reference to the South Yorkshire Investment Zone, more than happy to delay that to give members time to discuss other issues. Probably March might be a more appropriate time for that. That will give a whole 2 years of investment zone activity, and we'll be able to report on where that is, probably more for information than anything else.
Thank you for your contribution there, Ben. Yes, I will take that on board. I think we will be having a further officer briefing on this following the debate that we've had this morning, which again I say it's very positive, and let's work on it. So thank you for that. If there's any more questions on the work programme, we'll move on to the next item. No. Next item is item 8, the year ahead report, and I think that is you, Ben, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is.
That's the reason. Yes, spotted it straight away that you were sat there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This report's really for information for the committee and is very much in two parts. The first part highlights the activity which you've been overseeing for the past 12 months, and we've broken that down into the 3 core areas of the city goals and council plan, which is people, place, people, prosperity and planet. I need to get that right more often. And you can see the activity which you've been overseeing touches all the various different elements of that, and to draw out examples is almost a wrong thing to do because there's so much scope and activity, and I think we as officers are very pleased and proud of what we've delivered over the past 12 months or so. And that's just reflected here. I think more importantly is going forward, so section 3 of the report. And I think what I'd like to highlight more than anything here is that rather than just breaking things down against the council plan, we now have the growth plan, and that's probably the greatest achievement of the past 12 months actually. If you're going back to December last year, council did approve a growth plan. With its 4 missions. So increasingly, when we come to report progress and activity within our areas, and it should also cover across particularly into the TRC committee, you'll see how we're delivering against the specific growth plan missions rather than the council plan. And this is just a way of introducing actually our focus now is delivery of the growth plan more than anything else. And again, in section 3, you'll see there's a whole variety of different activity taking place, some of which has already started, some of which is yet to start, touching on all 4 missions of the growth plan. Obviously, very key areas in terms of the economy, the culture sector, and I think that's something which is definitely coming through now, which maybe was lacking two or 3 years ago, how important the cultural sector is, and obviously the discussion we just had about the nighttime economy, very much part of that. So that will build into our discussions and activity going forward. Touching on growing neighbourhoods together and the role the employment and skills team play there, which is a key part, and I think the presentation later will touch on some of those elements of how important this committee is in terms of that particular mission. And then finally, in terms of the infrastructure city on the move area, whilst it's not a key focus for this committee and the officers reporting to you, we do touch in certain areas, and in particular we have a paper later on which is about the decarbonisation of in our case for businesses, but obviously there's a wider decarbonisation of the city, and touching on the fact that we've actually seen the close down of the CAS grant scheme, which was delivered by this committee of officers in this area. So we are touching across various different elements of the whole growth plan, and your input is obviously going to be critical in enabling us to do that. And then finally, just a number of cross-cutting areas. Policy development, economic development doesn't stop with the growth plan. We will be continuing to develop ideas, and a critical piece of work coming out of that will be the development of an investment plan over the next 6 months or so, which will not only capture everything we're doing now, but start to look forward, identify key projects, and we're also keen to start to identify projects we don't even know about yet as well. So we'll be engaging with members through consultation processes and wider with external partners to try and capture some of those unknown activities which actually may have a greater impact on the economy of the city. And also to highlight a key element for us over the next few months is working with a combined authority to determine what will replace the UK Share Prosperity Fund, which has been a critical piece of funding for a large amount of our activity over the past 4 years. Government is expected to announce a replacement programme called the Local Growth Fund, which keeps being delayed, but potentially next week we're now being told, which will start to give an indication of the quantum of funding which might be available going forward. We've been advised it might not be at the same levels, so we will need to work with committee to identify how we will maintain existing programmes which you feel are important, and then also look at the investment plan and how we start to fund those new ideas and new activity with the funding we have available.
Thank you for that, Ben.
Happy to take questions.
I'll open it to questions. Councillor Rice. Sorry, Councillor Masters. I was anticipating you.
Thank you. I've got 3 queries. I mean, you've just mentioned the Shared Prosperity Fund. And can you confirm all the money has been allocated and when the end date is? Because I've had questions, because it's on the website, people say, oh, we can apply to the Shared Prosperity Fund. I'm thinking, no, you can't, because so it's officially closing down and all the money's been allocated, and I'd like that to be made clear somewhere.
Yes, so Shared Prosperity Fund money was allocated by the combined authority to the local authorities against specific areas of activity. That has been fully committed. We're currently ensuring that it's all spent this financial year. There are certain projects where people can access grant funding, so low carbon, for example, productivity grants, and obviously residents may take advantage of some of the programmes we're running through employment and skills, etc. So funding is available, but not directly. And as it stands, that programme will finish in March next year.
Thank you. Can it actually be made clear on the website exactly what can be done? Right, the next thing is going through the whole document. There's loads of mentions of steering groups, and it seems to have the same members, universities, Chamber of Commerce, and a couple of other people. And I'd like to think that we're reaching out to other organisations as well. I know that in a few cases we have done, but yes, they're the major players, but it's the input of the same sorts of ideas, and that worries me. So can you just, before my third question, thank you.
Yes, in some of the sort of larger strategic cases, we do tend to do that. They are our partners and probably delivering the type of projects which will have a significant impact on the city. But that doesn't exclude a lot of other groups and organisations we engage with. We have the Diverse Business Board. We're very closely working with the Volcom sector, and Laura might want to mention that in terms of the employability and skills areas. We work with the integrated, I'm trying to think what POP stands for board now, Yvonne, you'll know. Pride of Place Board, for example, which has other organisations on it as well. So not just the big names, we do engage widely. And importantly, we get a lot of feedback from businesses through the work we do as well. So our high street advisors, for example, are regularly getting feedback on the things we do, the things we can offer. So that all feeds into the overall areas of activity we might want to develop going forward. So it isn't just the big players. I think also with the development of the investment plan, we'll need to work out how we engage with partners in that as well, including a lot more with the private sector. To be honest, we need to engage with some of the big investment organisations and institutions which could also bring big benefits to the city.
Yeah, that's what worries me, because I talk a lot to the small SMEs across the board. Even though they're very positive about, say, engagement with the business advisory officers, they don't seem to have a common voice at all in the council. I mean, they're not actually represented by some of these even smaller bodies. So it worries me that we're missing out on a lot of information. Now, how you tackle that, I don't know. But communications is always an issue. And we've somehow got to learn how to communicate better what we have on offer and who can engage in the process. Because I think they don't take any notice of us. It's always this organisation, that organisation. If it's delivering in that area, it's always these people as opposed to us, who listens to us. So I worry about the communications aspect. And
we'll certainly take that on board. I mean, and clearly we work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, for example. So representative organisations is one of the ways we do actually reach many.
They don't represent all organisations.
No, I appreciate that.
And this is even the Junior Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Small Businesses, they don't actually cater for what we need in Sheffield. So it just gives you a flavour of what the issues are as opposed to what actually is stymieing development in Sheffield and allowing them to expand. And the last thing is, the times I've asked questions in full council about the library, Grace building, and all the time it's been, we're looking at the building, consultation, and again on page 47, I noticed again, it's under our remit, another feasibility study. Now, there's been so many delays. It says March 2026. What's the feasibility? I mean, a flag bit, the words are great, but I've seen them, same sorts of things 3 years ago. And I just want assurances that there will be some concrete outcome now. And I know that it's across another policy or another committee as well, but what assurances can you give? It's not just going to be another committee to follow this, another sort of feasibility study to follow this feasibility study because of something that's thrown up.
My starting point is it's not my area, so that's my get out. But what I can advise is that we have made funding available for this feasibility study, so that sits with the team leading the activity, and the intention is to have a concrete output, maybe stone output eventually, but a concrete output which sets out direction of travel. I don't expect that feasibility study will necessarily say, and here's the answer. It might provide various options, both in terms of the physical work required to the building and the uses for it. I know members who've been here a long time, and as an officer been here a long time, we've seen this several iterations before. I'm hoping this will be, a much clearer steer of direction, but I think we need to get it right. The investment into that building is going to be very significant, and the running costs with whatever direction it goes in also we need to be very clear about what an appropriate business plan is for that building going forward. So rushing it to get something out maybe might not be the best approach, but I appreciate it's a long time coming.
Hope rather than expectation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Barbara. Councillor Perret.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ben. It's adjacent to the report, but I think links to Barbara's penultimate question. We saw recently that the proportion of Sheffield businesses that have gained council contracts has risen from, I think, 19% to over 60%. I think that's a really good stat to have and a really great endorsement of the direction of travel the council's going in and how we are making contracting procurement more accessible to local businesses. I think the answer I was given earlier in my member question about the Sheffield Business Directory, again, is a really positive step. So I think I wanted to recognise and reflect that we're really happy with a lot of the work that is happening, the direction of travel, embedding social value and localising our supply chains and procurement. I think, yeah, recognise that there's more that can be done, but there's, yeah, some really positive and nice things that are happening as well. I just want to reiterate our thanks to everyone working on that.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you've come forward with one. I was going to suggest you. So,
yeah, I just wanted to make a point about the procurement piece in particular. That was pulled together by a priority that was set by our Diverse Business Board, which was set up 2 years ago. That does better represent our business base in Sheffield. And we're proud that that piece of work has led us to work entirely in hand with commercial services and with employment and skills as well. So I just wanted to say that that is a piece of work that actually is affected by a group of businesses prioritising areas that they want to see improvement in. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further questions, Councillor Rowler?
Thank you, Chair. Ben, you're right, the growth plan is one of the major achievements of last year, and I'm really excited that we're moving on to the delivery phase, which is just the real phase, to be honest. In terms of cross-cutting activity, I think we could do more cross-cutting activity with other committees, particularly TRC, Transport Regeneration and Climate Group. In terms of, I'm referring to more the regeneration aspect of that, and particularly city centre. City centre regeneration goes hand in hand with economic development. So I'd like to see more closely aligned work with them and vice versa. Thank you.
I think when you do see the investment plan, as it were, it will be very much an investment plan for the delivery of the growth plan in its entirety. This paper just obviously reflects on the area activity of this committee, but the investment plan will be very clear, covering city centre, whether it's commercial development, residential. Likewise, it will look at housing across the city as well. So it's very much a growth plan and an investment plan to deliver across the council, because there'll be other elements in there as well. For example, working with public health, that will be a key part of certain elements of the growth plan as well. So I think it's not going to be in isolation, so I can assure you of that.
Thank you so much. Any further questions from anybody before I come in? Yeah, just a couple of observations from myself. I think there's a great deal of everything that you've got there is absolutely brilliant, and it's things that we should be doing. But there seems to be a great deal of impatience amongst the public out there and, dare I say, members as well. And I think Barbara's alluded to one of them, which is the Central Library and Graves Gallery. So I'm not going to expand on that because that has already been alluded to. In terms of a couple of things that I've been approached about, or I wouldn't say lobbied, but people talk about, is the brand vision for Sheffield, marketing Sheffield. Yes, there is work that's ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing, but I think there's a slight impatience amongst businesses out there and people out there that we should be bringing this forward far quicker than it should be, and I'm sure there are good reasons for not doing it, but it's something that I think we need to look at fairly quickly. I know it says here, over the next 3 to 5 years, marketing Sheffield will become will evolve. But I think we've also got the Investment Sheffield plan coming as well at some stage in March, into the March committee. But the only point I'm making here is not a question, it's an observation coming from members of the public, which is that they want this work to happen quickly because we're in competition with not just cities in this country, but cities outside this country. And they seem to be, perception is they seem to be well ahead. I'm not saying they are, I'm trying to be very neutral on this if I can, but I think it's something, you've probably got the message, what I'm trying to say here. So that's on the brand vision for Sheffield. The other one that struck me as an observation also is that having read the report about how much tourism we get in this city, which is quite, it runs into millions, doesn't it, if I remember correctly from the report, which is absolutely brilliant. And the initiative that we've got here, City Breaks promotion, is again something that is a good, that we've got that, but I don't see it anywhere, or I'm not looking in the right places. I think we just need to sort of up our presence on that, if I may. You can.
Well, I know that's been raised previously, and I think an answer that was previously given was because a lot of the information about the City Breaks offer is external to the city because we're trying to pull people in. So you might not see it advertised here because you're not the ideal person to bring to Sheffield for a city break. But I'm sure officers may have something to say as well.
Fair point, Perek. But just it's something that's coming forward quite a lot, that we talk about a city that people want to come to. But sometimes people of Sheffield need to know that what we're actually doing as well. Sorry, I've started questions starting here, Councillor Masters, and then you.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the accessibility of the information. Now, I haven't got an IT mind. I ask the wrong questions of the internet, and I cannot navigate the council website easily when it comes to finding out what's going on in Sheffield. And I complained to somebody about it, and she said, oh, you should go on this site. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name. But you just clicked on Sheffield, and straight away, no fluffing about, it gave you a list of all the different categories, and you could then zoom in. Just 3 clicks, you could find out everything that was happening. And I'll try and get the name for you. But I'm thinking, why haven't we got that? I mean, yeah, all bells and whistles. It looks great, the website. But the number of steps you have to go through to find out what's going on. People like me lose the will to live. And especially people in Sheffield, because we think we know. And it's only when I've investigated, I think, blimey, is this really going on here? All these things and I didn't know, because it's just not easily accessible. And I really do wish that we could improve that aspect of our online presence. But I'll try and get that website for you so that you can see what I'm talking about. I just can't remember names. That's a huge disability of mine.
Just in response to a number of those points, I mean, firstly, Chair, if you don't live in Sheffield, then clearly we'd welcome you to Sheffield regularly. But the comment was correct in that, you know, the marketing for weekend breaks, city breaks, is external. However, inevitably, if we're not making people aware that we're actively promoting the city, then we maybe need to do something about that so people can feel proud about talking about the city, and have a greater way of attracting their friends, family to come to the city, so we can take them back to offices. We do have the Welcome to Sheffield website, which isn't the council website, and that is, I would say, relatively user-friendly. I'll take the comment back to the team. If they feel that it needs significant investment and improvement, we'll look at that. These things cost a huge amount of money, as you know, and resources, obviously, a big issue in terms of marketing, promoting, website development. We tend to do these, I won't say on a shoestring, but we're limited in terms of the resource available. So that doesn't mean to say we can't do things better. So we'll certainly take that back to relevant team members to consider. And no, well, I'll ask them to speak to you directly, Councillor.
Thank you so much. I'm just mindful of time. We can debate this for a lot longer. If there's no further questions, I think we'll move forward to the recommendation, which is asking for approval. Are we all agreed on that? All agreed. Thank you, Ben. Moving on to item 10, which is the Economic Development Skills and Culture Performance Monitoring Outputs. And I think it's Laura, Richard. Sorry, item 9.
I'm so sorry. I was just sitting there.
I was thinking,
have I missed something?
I'm just testing. It's item 9. So just a brief overview of the report. I think members must have all read it anyway, so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sorry. The paper is a paper that's been requested by the committee, and it's that we're constantly coming to you to talk about individual programmes and ask you for approval to accept the money and to spend the money. And actually what you wanted to see, was my understanding, was an overview of the whole system in the city. And that system, it's about employment, but it's also about health and skills, because all three need to be looked at holistically in order for us all to achieve our outcomes. And therefore, that's why we've got a three-hander here today. So we've got Ruth from the public health team and Richard from the skills team as well. The paper, as you say, Councillor Maroof, is very detailed, and so I don't propose to go through it ad nauseum today, but what we have done is put some slides together to give an overview of what the paper is trying to get across, and to see that linkage across employment, skills and health. The first thing we're going to do is have a case study, and Fiona, is it right that we're able to stop the webcasting just because the individual doesn't want this going out to the public? So, but what this case study does is show really nicely how, in tackling somebody's health, skills and employment barriers together, you can get successful outcomes.
That we're going to be making now about the broader system and how we're working to improve that. But I just wanted to set some of the context by talking about some of the statistics around this really complex area of employment, skills and health, to talk about how we're doing in Sheffield and the context in which Dom's story sits. So the Get Britain Working White Paper from the government sets a target for an 80% employment rate. And if you look at the top right of the slide there, you'll see that we're actually in Sheffield at 73.1%. And that shows that we're some way off that 80% target. When we're looking at what is the nature of people who aren't doing paid work, we've got two groups of people. We've got people who are unemployed, which is the top middle statistic, which is 4%. That's people who are actively looking for work. So they're applying for jobs, they're probably known to the job centre, they're actively looking for work. But you can see that we've got a much bigger group of people who are economically inactive. That's the top right. We've got 25% of our working age population in Sheffield.
Can I just ask a very quick question? Is that 4% in Sheffield?
Yes.
How does that compare nationally, very quickly? Sorry, just for context.
That is, I'll come back to that in a sec. That's fine. That is... Sorry, I'll come back to it in a sec. It's in the paper, I'll find it. Okay, so on the economic inactivity rate, we've got 25% of our working age population who are not looking for work. So they're not known to the job centre, they're not looking for paid work, and we know that a significant portion of those people, that 34%, is because of their poor health. Other reasons why people aren't looking for work might be their caring responsibilities, they're looking after children or other family members, but we can see that we've got a bigger issue in Sheffield with people who aren't looking for work than people who are looking for work. And when we think about some of the underlying and background reasons for that, a lot of that comes back to skills, and it starts in young people. So, for example, our young people who are 16 and 17 and who are not in employment or education or training, we've got 7.7% of people young people in Sheffield who are not in employment, education or training, and that is actually above the core city average of 7.3% and above our statistical neighbours. So we know that at that key transition point, when young people are moving into further education to enable them to get into work, or moving into work or developing their skills, we've got a substantial number who aren't doing that, and that is particularly linked with economic deprivation in the north and the east of Sheffield. So we can see from this that health, employment and skills are all intricately connected, and yet we know that employment is really bad for health. So we want people to get good work for all the benefits that that brings. So just going on to the next slide and developing that point a little bit more, we wanted to really show how the employment, health and skills cycle comes together. And I'm just going to talk about the health bit at the top of the slide, the green bit with the heart and the top comment. Good health is a massive asset and a resource for developing our economy, and good health enables people to get and keep work and to progress in work. We know that we've actually got a substantial portion of our working age population who have a health condition but actually are able to continue in work. So a lot of people are working with a health condition, and that's really good for their health to be able to keep working, and we want to really support that. So we know that people with a health condition can work and can do good work. What we need to do is support people into that. And I'm now going to pass on to Laura to talk about the employment implications.
Yeah, so good employment improves health and well-being. So working is good for your health, essentially. But it's also good for a number of other reasons, socially around reducing potential isolation, and obviously is a key factor within a household income. And progression within work relies upon skills. So there's, as we know, we have to constantly develop our skills in order to progress within the workplace, and so it's interlinked in that way. And I'll pass to Richard.
Thank you. Just before I move on to my bit, Kevin's just passed me the statistics, Councillor Rice. So Sheffield, you've just heard, was 4.2% unemployment. Nationally, that's 4.1%. So we're not far off from that score. But in terms of the economically inactive residents, you've had statistics, 25.6%. Actually, for the UK, that's 21.2%. So we are some way behind the national average. Regionally, I think we're closer to our neighbours in Rotherham, Barnsley and Doncaster. And it's similar. Ruth shared the information about those young people that are not in education, employment and training. We are slightly behind the core cities, as Ruth has already shared. So skills education is absolutely crucial. You could start with the cycle slide a moment ago. You could start anywhere on that cycle in terms of where people need the intervention. We know that young people, we've talked about this already in schools, you can trace things right back to the early stages of development, school attendance, transition into secondary school, then becoming neets. Where our services begin is at 16 plus, and that's where we pick up, but we do interface really well with already, my directorate, the belonging directorate, is where schools and education is based. So we are working really hard to get upstream of some of this as well, because we know that's where it starts. But in terms of skills development, educationally, we are working across the sector with colleges, etc., to look at how we can develop provision for young people who are NEET. But at any point beyond that, into adulthood, it's possible and it's necessary for adults to return to education. We know that when it comes to low educational attainment and lack of skills, it limits job opportunities, but it also relates and correlates to poor health later in life. So, for example, we look at the statistics around the economically inactive residents. Well, actually, a great proportion of those have come through without level 2 qualifications. I think it's about 40, in the 40s, the percentage. So the correlation is key, and so what our services are doing to try and align is to make sure that the skills support is there. If I move on to the next slide, we've attempted with this to, in your pack and in the papers, there was a table that ran over 3 pages which tries to describe all of the different programmes and initiatives and funded activity that our 3 services are working on. What this slide does or attempts to do is to put that visually into a more digestible form and summarising within broad headings. So I'll start us off on this. I mentioned the schools activity. Schools are responsible for careers, advice and guidance, but we have as a council a team called See It Be It, who work with the Pride of Place board, the employers across the city, to link employers to schools so that young people in schools even in primary schools, can have access and understanding of job opportunities in the city, and see it be it does what it says on the tin. Really, it's about supporting young people to have aspirations about what they might want to do later in life. We also then move on into what are called study programs. I've been to the committee before and talked to you about the activity that we as a council have through our provision at chief training, but equally, and actually on a larger scale, we've got the Sheffield College, we've got the school sixth forms, we have independent providers and independent sixth forms working in this space. And for young people with special educational needs and disabilities, it's recognised they need a longer opportunity to access those study programmes so they can stay on those programmes until they're 24. A form of study programme is the next one down, which is a supported internship, which is really toward the end of a young person's education, specifically for young people with education, health and care plans. And it's an opportunity to spend a year both in the classroom but also in the workplace. We've currently got about 83 opportunities in the city for young people to access those. Last year we had 50 in the 50s, around half of them have come out with a paid employment a job at the end of that. Those that haven't, again, this is where the integration between our services is crucial, so we can have a handover transition so young people, adults, aren't falling through the cracks. Community youth hubs are an important part of the picture. They're community-based activity around Job Centre Plus, an offer there for 16 to 24-year-olds, where young people access progression, mentor, holistic support from host organisations. And also listed there are apprenticeships, which again the council offers, but are offered much more widely than just our offer, and that's from the age of 16 upwards. Just an aside on that, we recently did a survey of young people between the ages of 16 to 18 who are NEET. Actually, most of them were 17, and 2/3 of them told us actually they didn't want to continue in a formal education setting, they wanted training that led to employment. So that's the voice that we're hearing, and that's something we are aiming to respond to. Beyond that, obviously, university education, we are a university city. The higher education offer in the city is key. But also, as I said earlier, it's possible for adults to return to learning at any point, and we have adult skills funded provision, both run through the council and through independent providers across the city. I'll hand over at that point to Laura to talk about some of the employment on that list.
Yeah, so just briefly to go over some of the employment programmes. The way we have tried to simplify this work over the last year is to be very clear about which programmes are suitable for which cohorts of people. So the first one, which Richard's already mentioned, is the community youth hub. So if you're a young person, 16 to 24, wanting to support in the community, then that's somewhere you can go to get employment help. The Economic Inactivity Trailblazer and the Health and Growth Accelerator on there, and we are one of only 3 areas in the country to have been awarded both of those pots of funding to prevent economic inactivity and to support people into employment who are economically inactive. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund there picks up the gaps, if you like, so that's unemployed people who can't get enough support from the job centre because they have multiple barriers. And then Connect to Work there, you see in the middle, is a new programme that's picking up from the supported employment programme, of which the case study was about, which helps people who've got autism and or learning disabilities. And then finally, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Skills Bank help to train and upskill people who are in the workforce but maybe have low-paid, low-skilled employment. So yeah, you can move on from that slide now. So I've talked about sort of how we've tried to clarify and simplify the system. Also want to talk about some of the integration that we've done across work and skills and health as a region and as a city. So strategically, we now have a shared governance over work and health, which is chaired by the lead for skills at Simca, and also the Integrated Care Board. So we've got that work and health bit right at the top there, being governed together. The intention is that longer term that will include skills as well. And then the way we're working is that South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, as you'll have seen in that system steward model that I've brought to committee before, sort of get the funds in and grant that to local authorities so that local authorities can work with its strategic boards which in our case is the Sheffield Employment and Skills Advisory Board, to commission that money in the most effective way possible. Additionally, we've also set up a triage system so that there's an independent place, one phone number, one email address for people in Sheffield to be able to access support, and those people will be directed to the support that will suit them the most. Ruth and I chair the Local Integration Board, which brings together all the providers of employment and health programmes within the city as sort of consultation and helping us to design things. And then obviously there's the Lifelong Learning and Skills Advisory Board, which I know Councillor Maroof chairs, which oversees some of the delivery of our learning. Okay, you can move on.
So on the final slide there, so this report's been brought to provide councillors and this committee with that oversight, and hopefully there'll be some questions, but hopefully we've achieved that. We've got some asks, if you like, at the end of that around what would support this work further. Flexibility in funding is key. We receive a large number of different funding streams, some through central government, certainly in my case, but many of them through SIMCA. I think locally, councillors, officers have got good insights into the, sort of the hyper-local, if you like, the communities that, where we need to target our resources. Where we can be flexible with funding, we already are, but I think further flexibility would be, we think further flexibility would be much appreciated and would really support our work to be focusing the interventions where they're most needed. Similarly, many of the funding arrangements that we receive are based on an annual cycle. As was said earlier, we come to this committee with requests regularly to receive funding into the city. We're hopeful that things like the single settlement through SIMCA will enable longer term funding arrangements. Certainly that would help our partners in the voluntary community sector who struggle sometimes with the annual cycle of funding requests and putting bids in for activity. So that would be a long-term ask from us as well. And then in terms of integration of some of the work that we do and championing what we do, again, we bring this paper to the committee and would ask that the work that we're doing is championed in the sense that we want residents to know they can come and access some of these options that we've listed today, promoting that, and obviously supporting us to make sure that our services are integrated well so that it's a single front door, essentially. And actually the final slide that we've got to show you details what that single front door looks like for residents who want to know more information about what might be the right programme for them. There's information there from an email address and a phone number that people can contact, and they can then be triaged and sent to the right council officer.
Thank you so much for that. That was a very comprehensive report and a comprehensive synopsis on it as well. So I'll open it up to questions, and the first question is from Councillor Rice.
Microphone. Are you pleased that I didn't ask any things on the last agenda item? But I've got a few things on here. I remember at the July, I think it was a July sitting of this council, where Richard presented, I'm going to move this slightly close to me, where Richard presented information on the Connect to Work and the Adult Skill Fund, the receipt of monies from SIMCA regarding that. I did ask in that meeting, and Rich and his team have put it together of demographic data and geographical data as to where the provision is located. I did want to bring up a few notes on that, and this is specific to the Adult Skills Fund and the Connect to Work, and other schemes in this I don't have the data for, but I'd love to know kind of expansive understanding of that. That 70% of those people accessing the Adult Skills Fund funded schemes and the Connect to Work are female. So how are we going to redress that balance, given that poverty can affect both genders equally? I also note on the geographical spread of the provision that there is no provision really within the north area of the city. I'm thinking Ecclesfield and Chapeltown, but also Stocksbridge, and also in the southeast of the city around Bayton and Mosborough, which feels particularly pertinent given the closure of the Peaks campus of Sheffield College, meaning that there isn't any post-16 education provision down in that side of the city. My particular concern on this is kind of aspirations within the kind of the white working class communities of those areas, and whether, and again, there may be other schemes in this that are covering up. I've only got this information for the Connect to Work and the Adult Skills Fund, whether we can look to kind of understand how things like public transport, how kind of generational aspiration amongst these communities might affect engagement, and whether or not we can move these services into those communities to try and give them a little bit of a kind of a show of support in there. But also thinking about this because up in Stocksbridge, Ecclesfield, Chaptertown, but also in the southeast, that geographically and transport links, they are connected to Barnsley and Rotherham as much as they are connected to the city centre. And I was just wondering whether there are conversations happening outside the city council silo through Simca to leverage like education, adult education support in those councils for those communities for which public transport access might be slightly easier.
Thank you for that question. I'll take one more question and then it gives you time to reflect on that. Councillor Perret.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks all. This is a really welcome and really engaging report, and I really like the format of how you presented as well. I think it's very refreshing. I've just got two very quick questions. One, I guess Laura in particular, you mentioned that good work improves health outcomes, which I really agree with. I guess the inverse is true as well. Bad work can have a really detrimental impact on people's health. Can you talk a bit more about how we're driving up working conditions and working standards in the city as well? And then two, really appreciate the recommendations, and particularly the last one where it's putting more of a request on us as well. I guess when you ask us to support the services by promoting the offer, I guess, can we ask that maybe a resource is drafted for us to be shared on social media? And I think that can go to all councillors rather than just on the committee as well. I think, you know, we all have communication channels. I think would be very happy to do that, assuming this is approved, which I know it will be. And in terms of advocating for longer term or less prescriptive programs, I guess we are already seeing a move towards longer term financial settlements, but did you have a particular form of advocacy in mind? Would you like the committee to draft a letter requesting a change of finance? Yeah.
Thank you. Take those two questions and I'll give you the next two questions.
Well, I'll respond first of all to Councillor Rice, and perhaps Laura will respond to Councillor Parrott, but please jump in with other responses. So I think the points that you raise are absolutely points that we are very aware of ourselves as well. We have we mentioned earlier, we have a Lifelong Learning and Skills Advisory Board, which coincidentally met yesterday, and it was one of the points discussed there at length as well. It's our statistics and information around the communities that we serve and the communities that we reach do demonstrate an underrepresentation of the white working class community in Sheffield. That's certainly true of the adult skills provision that we offer. To some extent with the young people that are not in education, employment and training, I accept what you're saying. It's a point that's been raised with us a number of times around access to FE provision for 16 to 19-year-olds in the southeast of the city. And it is something that other officers in commissioning are looking at, as well as bringing us into that. But there is a disproportionate representation of people from the north of the city centre when it comes to NEET. So it is a citywide issue. There are pockets, absolutely pockets, where we need to do more. I think in terms of a response from the Lifelong Learning and Skills Advisory Board yesterday, we've started to look at different ways to try and approach this, working with the local area committees in some of the areas that you've listed. There is, I mentioned last time, I think, so I won't repeat myself, around some of the work we're beginning to do in Stocksbridge, but absolutely accept what you say about Chapeltown and Ecclesfield and Bayton and Mosborough and those sorts of areas within the city. Simca recognise that as well. They are looking at the distribution of adult skills funding across the region, and I think from that data, from their data, it's recognised that there are, let's say Barnsley, for example, is a recipient of more Sheffield residents than they might have expected statistically, and I think a lot of that is down to transport links, as you say. So there's a conversation with the skills leads within Simca about how we can redress that balance ourselves. Some of that is around transport, some of that is about us trying out opportunities to co-locate some of our offer with what Laura's team offer, i.e. employment and skills provision, let's ensure there's a learning option or opportunity for information, advice and guidance about learning happening in the same locations that we're delivering that. So there's a long way to go on this, but it's something we're acutely aware of, and I'll try and come back to future committees with some moving that dial slightly.
Yeah, if I could just build on that as well. Just for a point of clarification, the Connect to Work data isn't something we have shared. So I think the Connect to Work is the employment programme that's for people with learning disabilities, but I'm happy to provide some data and information. It is really difficult sometimes. So we've to get into certain communities. So we've for years and years wanted to have employment support within Stocksbridge because it is very difficult to travel into the city from there. And finally this year we've managed to crack that, and we're working with the Stocksbridge Town Enterprise Partnership, I think, and they are hosting some employment support. And actually I know that Richard's colleague is delivering some family and community learning to some workers up in Stocksbridge as well. So we've got something small going on in that area now that we're trying to build on. Crystal Peaks, for instance, has a youth hub where 16 to 24-year-olds can go to get support. I know that individual who works out there has actually got 30 people in that locality into work since April, which is really a significant number for one or two workers. So it's a really successful programme. So we know it, we're working on it, but it takes time, I suppose. And I'll hand on to Ruth around the good health, good work bit.
Yeah, thank you for the question about good work. Completely agree. And that's when I talk about work, I always try and say good work, because we know that work can be very bad for people's health as well. And on the slide where we had a number of where we had the programmes, you can see that we've got a programme called Sheffield Occupational Health Advisory Service, which is commissioned from public health grant money. And that's for people who are in work who are struggling with their health. And often actually that intervention with the individual who's referred themselves or been referred by their GP is about what their employer is or isn't doing, and sometimes some of that is illegal. Employers are not operating within the law in terms of how they treat their employees, and then there is an advocacy and a support role for those individuals to help them to go back to their employer and say, actually, you can't do that. I think one of the things that we've also talked quite a lot in employment programmes and in our local integration board with providers is that we're not about a job at all costs. It needs to be good work for people, and I know that Laura's team and our partners are always thinking about what's going to work best for a person in terms of good work, in terms of what they need, but also in terms of what the employer can provide.
And just to mention some of the initiatives that we're working on around that at the moment. So the Pride of Place board, you may have seen, had about 400 business people in the city attend the Opening Doors launch, which is around inclusive recruitment, essentially. A further campaign intends to be around supportive employment, essentially, and that's being led by the Pride of Place board, because businesses are better at telling other businesses rather than the council telling businesses. So we're working with the chamber and that board on that piece of work.
Thank you for those answers. I think I've got another 4 questioners, so if I could suggest a bit more snappy questions and snappy answers, because we've only got 45 minutes left, I think. So the next question is from Councillor Nottage.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks a lot for all the work gone into this. The need is clearly massive. That economically inactive figure is far too high for the region. So the white paper announced us as 3 health and growth accelerator sites out of 8 trailblazer sites, which is great news for the region. What are the other 2 sites, and are we doing any comparison in terms of what programmes are being delivered in the other 2, and are we going to be doing any benchmarking and sharing of best practice with those going forward?
Thank you. Barbara?
Thank you for that. I mean, right, I'm going to put a sour note, if you like, and I'm looking at pages 60 and 61 in our packs. Now, basically, so often, whether whoever's interviewed, whether it's locally, nationally, sort of a successful person, if they're asked sort of, if they come from a disadvantaged background, they're asked, would a young person now from your background have any chance? And the answer is no. And it's such a negative message. All the time we hear about the disparity of wealth in the city, the impact on health. We know this, all right? That isn't the issue. The issue is a lot of these young people and their families are told you haven't got a chance because of where you live. And that's not true. You know, and I'm really concerned about the negativity that's always associated with this, which I think is part of the problem with sort of, if you like, the white working classes. I mean, how many instances do you hear every day in the media, social media? No chance. Everything's, you know, you're being put on, everything's taken away from you. How can we make that into a positive message? You have a chance, you know, to do this. The other thing is sort of, you know, with the new employment laws, we know, I know from talking to businesses, and not all of them, but quite a few who would sort of, if you like, give young people a chance and then allow them to progress. They're very aware of new employment laws and the rights to students. They're very risk averse because in the past they've been stung, all right? And so how do you cope with that? Because we need them, responsible employers, not the rogue ones, because of course, I mean, the fallback position is the black economy, and we know that's thriving from, I mean, the stories I hear are horrendous, to be quite honest, and they're the ones where the youngsters get caught out for quick, sort of easy bucks. Why should they engage with education when they can get easy money for all sorts of reasons? So I think my concern is the messaging, improve that to show that, yes, you've got an alternative, you have a chance, we'll develop your skills, we'll develop your strengths into something meaningful and positive and rewarding. And I just don't think that is coming through, because all the time it's that lot versus that lot. And that's just not what Sheffield should be about. So I think, and the other thing is for Richard, I used to teach, so I know I've had experience with these people, these young people. They cannot actually achieve a qualification for all sorts, even a level 1, level 2, say maths, because I taught maths. They cannot achieve it, and yet their skills, mathematical skills are brilliant, but not exams-wise. And they've also got a whole range of other skills, but employers will not give them a chance because you need basic maths and basic English. How can we change the culture so that a young person can demonstrate their aptitudes and encourage an employer to give them a chance to develop that regardless of their academic qualifications? And that really bothers me, because that's a huge pool of youngsters who are disengaged with education because they're branded as failures all the time. And by the time they get to adults and children of their own, you're perpetuating the cycle. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If you take those 2 questions, and then I'll bring the final 2 questions in.
So I'm going to answer Councillor Nottage's question about the Health and Growth Accelerator. Yes, our colleagues in the Integrated Care Board in the NHS got the funding for that, and they are learning from other places. It would be fair to say that they're actually ahead in South Yorkshire compared to other places, because they didn't necessarily expect to get this money for employment-focused work. We're working really hard to try and integrate that with our existing work, because we do have a lot of those projects that we talked about earlier do already work with health partners, particularly primary care. But what they're using that money for is to do some test and learn activities about how they can support people who want to get back into work but are maybe waiting for a health intervention. So, for example, have got a mental health problem but are still waiting to see somebody, or have got a musculoskeletal issue and still waiting to see a physio. So that is about that level of, they're trying to offer that support as part of the Health and Growth Accelerator, but obviously that really ties in with the other bits of work that we've been talking about, because often Laura will have, and Richard would have people on their programmes who are going, yeah, but I've also got this that I need to have some help with before I'm able to move on in my employment or skills journey. So we're really trying to integrate that. They're trying to learn from other parts of the country, and we'll see how that develops as it goes, but it's quite new work for them.
Great stuff.
Yeah, the 2 other areas are Greater Manchester and West Midlands, and my information is that we are, you know, quite significantly ahead in our delivery. So, but we will benchmark against them when we get to the end of the year.
Yeah, I'll certainly come back to Councillor Masters and other people might want to as well. I think the messaging, absolutely, I recognise that, and we don't, we use sweeping statements like the white working class communities, which are unhelpful. I think an example of where the positive messaging is coming through, and I think it's an area I'm very proud of, is within the CIB team. The links with the Pride of Place board that they've established and the number of employers that have committed to working with CIB, i.e. coming into schools offering work experience placements, or just coming and doing assembly, talking to groups of young people, allowing those young people to come into their businesses, their settings. I know there was trips out to Forge Masters, all these sorts. They are very much targeted at some of the communities that we've listed today. And I think, I'd invite any member of the committee really to come along to the big challenge awards at the end of the year, where young people from different schools across the city are given money to invest and to create their own entrepreneurial exit of business. It's a sort of heartwarming and a very diverse and a good representation of schools in Sheffield. So I think there are positive messages coming through from activity and engagement like that, but I don't for a moment suggest that on its own that will solve the problems that you've listed. I think there's a lot more to be done. And I think that obviously starts with the schools activity and the messaging through schools. So I'll take that back to colleagues within my directorate belonging, where the work is taking place with schools, and see what more we could do in that space. I think when it comes to the maths and English and the qualifications that you've listed, again, we've talked about this before and absolutely recognise what you described there. For young people that we educate, there are opportunities to do stepping stone activities that aren't all about qualifications, and that's very much about building skills, building self-confidence. We've got adult programs as well, and I've talked to the committee before about the Multiply program, which builds on that, which again isn't about qualifications per se, it's about building skills for work. The challenge, like you say, is what employers are looking for and what people put currency on, and that does tend to be qualifications. I'm encouraged by the white paper that was released on Monday, I think, by the government around post-16 education. There is recognition in that there needs to be a move away from young people being sort of forced, if you like, to sit exams when they're not ready to, and actually what that does to young people's self-esteem. So the education absolutely needs to take place, but it shouldn't all be about qualifications, and I'm hopeful that that white paper might see a bit of a sea change in the culture around this, but obviously that's a longer-term response.
Thank you for that. I'll take the next two questions and I think we'll conclude on that. Councillor Ola.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Laura, Ruth and Richard, for your joined-up presentation. They're like the close link between health, skills and employment. And as Ruth, you said, I totally agree. They are integrally related, and I support their integration. I want to ask a question in terms of what this integration would mean for a resident out there. I know we've got this triage service. So if I was a resident, I come with my story, will all my needs be taken care of, or would I still need to go to different services for different needs? I'd like you to please expand on that. And also, how do we get more people to know about the website, the number, this triage service available? I don't think it's widely known out there. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fox, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. It follows on from Barbara's questions, really. The last time you presented, we had the Sheffield College chair here, and what she was saying was that she struggled to employ teachers for manual skills because they're earning far more on the building sites than what they are in a classroom. So I wondered if that has changed. Also, a few years ago, the government used to pay for people to take on apprentices, and this stopped. Is this something that's going to be brought back? Because what employers tell me is they'd love to take an apprentice, but their margins are very, very slow. Their profit margins that slight, that they can't afford to. They need to employ somebody that's going to be straight into this to be making money for them. Because of the energy costs, etc. and things. So is that something else that maybe we can be lobbying the government about? And going back to, the skills that Barbara were mentioning as well, I heard this sad story my grandson told me about. He's at college, and last year a child was put into his class, very happy, capable. Midway, they realised that he didn't have the qualifications to meet that, so they took him out. But he was being quite happy and obviously achieving in that. And they put him on a lower, because of his qualifications. Clearly, he probably was, able and skilled. And because of that, he left college and has never returned to education or training or anything. Became a NEET, all because of an error. And if that had been looked at differently, at this child as capable of doing that, because if he weren't reaching that he would have been missing college, wouldn't he? But he was capable, quite happy in class, and then they never saw him again. Just an example. The other thing that people tell me, moving on to adults, about working from home and how that helps their health needs. And a lot of employers are trying to encourage people to go back to work, which quite a few people tell me that working from home gives them that flexibility for when they're struggling mentally or physically. That really helps them. So, and I know Sheffield City Council actually supports working from home and encourages it as well as coming in. So I'm not criticising Sheffield City Council, but other employers are not looking at this. Thank you. I'll shut up.
Right, I'll try and take those quickly. So, yes, Councillor Uller, the idea is that we have these community bases where there is offers of support with health, with skills and with employment. They can't all be paid for out of one place. I can't be spending my finite employment services money on health services, for instance, but that's why we work together to sort of look at things holistically, co-fund services within communities that people can access. I don't think there's been any change in terms of the pay for the tutors compared to the market rate. There are significant bits of money that support people to take apprentices. I mean, the training, for instance, is paid for out of the levy, and if you're a small business, you don't pay a levy, you can now get that funding through the South Yorkshire Apprenticeship Hub. However, one of the difficulties is wages, obviously. There is talk at the moment about looking at the Trailblazer to try and use some funding to support a subsidy. And we've got meetings about that later today, actually. So hopefully there'll be some further incentives for employers, because we do understand it's a challenging labour market out there. Yes, and around the supportive employer thing and working from home, I mean, it's interesting because actually, working from home doesn't do my health any good. I prefer to be in the office. There's isolation and things attached to. So there's both sides of that. But obviously, the more we campaign to make employers or to help employers become more supportive of their staff, it has all sorts of business benefits as well as benefits for the individual.
Thank you very much for that. I think there's been a quite comprehensive debate there. I try not to curtail debate because I think it's terribly important that members do get their questions out there and do get them answered. I've only got a couple of observations. I'll be extremely quick. One is championing the work that you're actually doing and getting it out there. I think that's something that probably our media team can help with as well. So I would suggest that the media team helps you to do that. I think that was a fair point there. And in terms of what Denise was talking about, recruiting tradespeople into training, I did have a conversation with Angela as well at the college, and I think that is a struggle, but Richard and I have started to look at how we can try to get more tutors in, and we're going to be doing a little bit of work on the back of that in the future. So I'm not going to take any more questions. We'll go straight to the recommendation. If everybody's happy with the recommendation, then we'll take it as read. Thank you so much. Item 10, which is Economic Development, Skills and Culture Performance Measures. I'm just mindful of the time. It's half an hour left.
Oh,
is it 12:30?
Yes, we can go to 12:30.
We're going to 12:30. So you can carry on with all the passion.
Thank you, Chair. This paper is relatively dry because it's telling you what we'll be bringing to you in a couple of months' time rather than giving you any performance measures today. So the context of this is that the Council is now introducing a full performance framework which will cover the delivery of the Council plan and each committee will have its own set of measures to overview. We've presented these in full detail in the paper, and it's probably worth just splitting out two different categories. So there's the corporate measures, which we will be reporting to Finance and Performance Committee, along with all other parts of the Council in terms of delivery of the Council plan. And you can see that they're at a very high level in terms of largely reporting of the state of the economy of Sheffield and in comparison with national figures. And thereafter we break down in more detail some of the areas of activity which will be taking place within the different sections or different departments within the economic skills and culture team and the adult skills team. And as you had some reports just now discussing some of those areas of activity. Some of those performance figures will be annual, some will be quarterly, and that's just the way the information is provided. They will be coming from sources where we are confident that they will be reliable information, and it will be, we'll establish a baseline and can continuously report against, rather than just having a one-off figure, or you're not reliant on a source which is maybe untrustworthy or uncertain. And you can see some of the activity or some of the measures will be at a city level. Some will be actually at a project level where we're delivering activity within some of the projects we've reported to you as well. So you're going to get a full range of information. As I say, some will be annual, some will be quarterly. The intention is to bring the report to you on a quarterly basis. So some things we're not going to change into every other fourth meeting. And what we do need to work on between now and the first report, which we're hoping to do in December, is work on the best way to actually display this information, because there's a lot of measures there. There'll be a lot of information to try and absorb. So we need to try and make it as easy as possible for you to interpret and for us to try and describe as well. So some of that I suspect will be quite visual, and we give some examples of that in the paper as well. If this isn't a static set of measures as well, if things change over time, or if there's areas you want us to try and explore, and we can find reliable data sources, then obviously we'll look into that as well.
Thank you for that, Ben. Questions from Councillor Masters, then Councillor Rice, and then Councillor Gregg.
I'll make this brief, and thank you for identifying the metrics. I think I'm building a little bit of a reputation as somebody who likes numbers, likes data. I think that's the best way of us understanding who we are as a city. One thing that I have noticed is a lot of these things are retrospective views, so therefore it's looking at how things have changed over the past. It isn't really looking forward, and not to be too on the nose about it, but it does very much feel like we're trying to walk forwards by looking backwards. I was just wondering whether, I brought this up in the briefing, any work has gone into commissioning kind of randomised representative kind of polling of the residents, because things like employment rates as a city may differ hugely based on the community. Opinions on the city centre may be similar in terms of demographics or geography. Optimism about business and entrepreneurialism may do the same. But the one bit where you have tried to get a qualitative understanding, which is reputation engagement, engagement with Welcome to Sheffield website. I do note that that will be a self-selecting group of people who engage with council services, and as all politicians know, we hear far more about the bad news than we do of the good. So I think having something that is independent may be useful as a bit of a baseline to work from.
Thank you for that. I think in terms of a geographic spread, some of these will be able to be broken down into geographic areas, whether that's at a ward level or even below that, super output layers. But that is again based on the core data which is collected nationally, but there is some ability to break down some of the geography. And I think when we come to present this information on a quarterly basis, one of the things we might want to discuss is how we break down. We might not want to focus on everything because there's so much information here, but we might, as a committee, you might want to say, well, let's pick on a certain area, whether it's broken down into the different areas we've identified here, like culture and place marketing, or business support, area activity. But then we might be able to break down the detail a bit further in that respect and provide that information. I think the key thing in terms of looking forward, obviously this is based on information which has been collected. One of the things we do need to think about through the committee and through the development of the investment plan is what are our targets, where are we trying to get to, and that is that forward look. We can only have that forward look if we establish the baseline, and is it a comparator with, say, core cities, which is generally the approach which has been taken in a number of areas for the large cities. How do we compare with Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, etc. That's always a good place. And do we want to get there? Do we want to go beyond there in terms of our performance in certain areas, bearing in mind where we're starting from? So that's again an area we can discuss, and I think it's important to recognise this will evolve over time as we get to implement it. In terms of polling, etc., I think the key issue is resource, to be honest, about our ability to do things over and above which aren't either collected nationally through recognised sources or through activity where we're delivering activity. So some of this will be project related, where we collect information which we have to report to external funders, for example. So once we start going beyond that, it then becomes an issue of resource. Now, if committee really specified a certain area which you want us to investigate, then we'll look at that and discuss that with you. But we need to bear in mind, is that something which we can actually deliver with the resources available?
Thank you for that, Councillor Masters.
Thank you. A couple of things. Right, when I look at what you're measuring, there's nothing, well, very little about income generation or return on our investment. I mean, income generation, it's mentioned, we know, because we get the figures about sort of sporting events, tram lines in Sheffield. We know the figures for that. But there isn't anything else that I can see apart, I think that's the main thing, apart from investment zone, business rate, retention. So I presume that's not generation, it's just a figure that we have. Now, we've got, so in the first measures, income generated by, oh gosh, I've forgotten. My notes are scrappy, so I'll leave that one. Right, Business Sheffield measures, number of jobs created, number of jobs safeguarded. Now, in the city centre, we know we've got a proliferation of hospitality venues. We know that the council helps the kit out costs. We know there's usually sort of a rate holiday. And yet a lot of these firms seem to go bust in a couple of years and move on. And there's nothing in here to indicate that, yes, the jobs are being created, a number, you know, safeguarded maybe, but how much does it cost the council? Has it actually brought money back into the council by supporting these businesses quite financially, sort of heavily? And the other thing is sort of, you know, and I fully approve of the business support we've had for our local high streets. I mean, they've really benefited my ward. And it touches on what Minesh was saying earlier, sort of it's measures to see sort of how we can measure the return on our investments in those businesses. So it's a wider issue, but it does sort of, it follows on from there. And because we've got a lot there. So I think they're the main things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. In terms of some of the measures we've got here, they are project specific. So these are largely shared prosperity fund projects where we are investing directly in a business, usually through a grant programme. There may be through advisory work as well. So if there's an area which members particularly want to explore going forward, we could look at the cost of that, so we know how much shared prosperity funds going into that particular project, and we can look at the cost per job, for example, generated or safeguarded. It won't necessarily be specific to what we can draw down to a grant number specifically for a business, but there are ways and means of doing that. But that again is additional work over and above the core measures. But if that's where members want to take us on this, as we sort of learn the reporting process and where you want to dive deep, then that's clearly something we can look to do. But that's where we have a direct relationship with a business or through a project activity, a range of businesses. What we won't necessarily have is what's the impact of the spend the council's incurred through this committee in respect of the wider Sheffield economy, because there's just no way of having a direct correlation. So we can certainly explore these things. As I say, this is at a point in time set of measures. We will learn over the time, each quarter. We can discuss with you prior to committee meetings if there's any areas you want to delve deeper into and try and pick up some of those areas where possible.
I think it's just a general point, sort of, can we look at opportunities for return on investment and sort of, what was the other thing I said? Income generation apart from the events. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Perek.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Ben. Similar theme, mine's a request for more specific breakdowns, just on some of the particularly Business Sheffield data, but also culture data, the number of businesses supported, number of start-up and scale-ups, number of cultural organisations engaged. Could we also get that as a breakdown by, I guess, size of business and type of business? So small, medium, large, if they're cooperative social enterprises. I think that would help give a more well-rounded picture of the businesses we're engaging with, sense of the city, sense of our local economy, and I'm sure we have some of it as well, so it'd be great to see.
Where we have a direct relationship with the business, so where we provided a grant, for example, we will have that level of detail. I think, again, it's working out from the committee's perspective, how much detail do you want in the context of, we've got maybe 50 different measures here. If we can agree in advance of committee, if you want to focus on a certain area like business support, investment, or income generation might be across the board, for example, then we can try and adapt it for each quarter report to the areas which committee wants to investigate. So we'll pick that up through our pre-meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Nottage.
Thanks, Ben. I'm looking forward to see how this dashboard sort of comes together. As Councillor Rice mentioned, being able to drill down on some of them by geographical area would be really useful, but I'd also like to be able to drill up on some of them to give us regional and national context. Obviously that's more appropriate if it's come from a national data source, and knowing for each metric whether it's being locally recorded or coming from a big national data set would be useful information for us. And we've mentioned a lot of different axes for each of these, because you've got how they vary over time, how they go geographically, how they go by business sector and things like that. For other areas of council work where we've got a three-dimensional data model, we've been given access to a Power BI dashboard. Do you think that would be appropriate here? Because I'm concerned that if we answer all of our questions for all of these metrics, the next report with it printed out is going to be like 800 pages long.
Yeah. We'll work certainly how we present it, because, as you say, it could be a fairly horrendous spreadsheet or whatever else we'll have to go through, and we'll probably never touch on any other items in that particular committee. So we'll investigate that in terms of how best to present it. I mean, what we have provided an example, a couple of examples and a couple of measures where we do start to set out, in particular, sort of those more national figures in comparison with core cities. Important to note that we do provide the source, so whenever we do provide information, we will provide the source, so you can check where that is. Some of it will be our own information we collect if it's project related, but some of the other figures obviously would be like the ONS, for example. So yeah, how we present this is going to be quite important, and I would anticipate Power BI at some point along the line. But I have to say that Power BI is a bit beyond me at the moment in terms of how you even get the information on there, let alone manipulate it. But we'll have to work with you and within officers to work out the best way to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker.
When talking about supporting businesses, could I just urge that you don't overlook the bottom rung of entrepreneurship, and that is market trading. I know of people who started off on market stalls and moved on to town centre, city centre shops, paying good levels of rates and stuff to their respective towns. But they are declining at the moment, both inside and outside markets. And there are ways that they could be encouraged, such as placing people, grants to place people with them, that, you know, just to help with the work that they do. There are all sorts of ways of giving assistance. I'd just like, and it's such it's an easy way for people to become entrepreneurs rather than make the massive leap into shops. So I would just like to suggest that remember market trading.
Yvonne might want to come and comment specifically as it sits in her remit.
Yes, so the Business Sheffield programme does support individuals who are at the pre-start stage that have an idea, and businesses of all sizes. So our high street advisors are just one very small part of the Business Sheffield team, and we do support indeed businesses that are in the markets. And we're also looking at meanwhile space in the city centre to give people an opportunity to try a bricks and mortar space before moving into a city centre or other location on a local high street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ruller.
Thank you, Chair. Ben, as you know, we are a proud university city. International students make a significant contribution to our economy, something like £770 million per year. Given they are what we call a core economic asset to our city, is there any way we can have a measure of number of international students coming to that particular year and the contribution that they've made in the last 1 year? So I'd like to suggest that.
Certainly explore it. The university obviously will have both universities will have the information on their students, what they can provide. What we can certainly investigate.
Thank you so much for that answer. I think if there's no further questions, we'll just go towards the recommendation. Is everybody okay with the recommendation? Thank you so much. Item 11, which is the business decarbonisation route map. And I've got Jen Rickard, but I think Jen's not going to present this.
It's myself, Chair. Yvonne instead of Chair. Thank you. Thank you. I'll try to be quick, just conscious of time. So the report is just to note the progress on the development of the plan and to talk through plans for business engagement over the coming months. That was a critical requirement from committee members about this decarbonisation route map. So just a bit of background about the decarbonisation route map. It is part of Sheffield City Council's 10-point plan for climate action, and it is the 5th of 10 route maps, which is designed to be business-facing. It will outline, when complete, priorities and actions that businesses can take to decarbonise. As I said, it does require a different approach, and committee members were very keen that we engage with businesses of all sizes in the city to be able to come to the route map position. We know Sheffield businesses face significant challenges from rising energy costs and the transition to net zero, with impacts varying by sector and business size. Whilst energy costs have stabilised, we know that this is still an issue for businesses of all sizes in the city and nationally. Locally, Sheffield City Council through Business Sheffield supports a wide range of businesses, from independents to large SMEs, and we manage our own low carbon grant programme, which Ben mentioned earlier. That's funded by SPF funding. It helps businesses to cut emissions and their energy use. The low carbon project offers free energy audits, expert advice and grants covering up to 50% of project costs to help Sheffield SMEs in commercial premises reduce carbon emissions and in turn reduce their energy costs. To date, the project supported 208 businesses achieving 1,021 tonnes of carbon reduction. And whilst we know that interest has dropped recently in the current SPF programme for new businesses interested in the programme, we have seen an increase in businesses that have previously had grant support who are looking for their next stage of decarbonisation along their journey. So that's sort of our experience of decarbonisation. The route map will take that experience into account, but also much wider context, and also what businesses in Sheffield are doing themselves to decarbonise. In order to develop the route map, we established a steering group to guide the project with representation from key local organisations and also a number of local businesses of different sizes as well. The group shaped the project scope and commissioning brief and emphasised that the route map should prioritise actions with the greatest decarbonisation impact, highlight existing progress and business success stories to build confidence, and recognise that some businesses have limited capacity or appetite for decarbonisation due to a number of competing pressures. ARUP were appointed through an open competitive process to deliver the work, and business representatives from the steering group were part of the evaluation process alongside internal officers, including myself. ARUP have since developed a stakeholder mapping exercise and engagement plan which sets out clear principles and formats for engagement. That engagement deliberately proposes using different formats to try and engage with as many businesses as possible. So ARUP have proposed a number of different things which I will go through. That actually did start this week, so we had a round table on Monday with policy individuals from national, regional and local policy about decarbonisation and net zero. We've also had a steering group meeting this week to go through the consultation plan with the steering group, who were happy and were able to feed in additional comments to support the engagement with businesses. So ARUP are proposing 4 workshops. 1 is around raising awareness and 3 are around co-design of the route map. An online survey to gather broad business feedback and 20 one-to-one interviews for deeper insight. Stakeholder invites designed to ensure sectoral and size diversity, business size diversity, and we will promote the consultation through Business Sheffield networks and also through the steering group networks as well. It does align closely with the development of the Sheffield's local area energy plan to ensure coherence and avoid duplication of engagement with businesses as well. And finally, just to say that the committee will receive ongoing updates about the plan, and we hope to have the final plan in the early months of 2026. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Open to questions. Councillor Mathew.
Thank you. I saw the hands up first. Right, a couple of comments. Yeah. How much of the carbon reduction is due to the loss of jobs? Because we know manufacturing industries received a hit, and how much is sort of carbon reduction measures? That's the first thing. The second thing is, you mentioned about the low carbon grants, which are great, but when I've talked to businesses, they say, not bothering. I don't own the premises, and the owner just won't engage, or they'll put up my rates, you know, and that's a huge challenge because I know there's been sort of less uptake on that than possible, than is expected. Oh gosh, and you talked about transport transitions on page 111. and a lot of the industries seem to be moving more to specific parts of Sheffield, which necessitates a lot more travel than where they're originally located. And I'm just wondering about the links with actually getting the transport networks to these places so that people can use, say, public transport or other modes of travel rather than the car to get there. And the last bit is page 112. Who's identifying innovations in green technology? So I keep on asking, what's a green job? And we know the standard replies, but I've gone to other places. And I've had one company, engineering background, very green technology in that it's moving towards sort of reducing sort of our reliance on fossil fuels markedly. And they said they had to move out of Sheffield. They just couldn't get the support here. You know, they'd moved to Coventry. And so who's identifying the innovations in green technologies so that we know what to support? Because traditionally it should be the universities, but they're not the key players in this, because, and it worries me. I was going to say something else, but I'll leave that for the moment.
Thank you. So just on the carbon reduction numbers and links to job losses, the carbon reduction amounts that I included just then and that are in the report was very specific to the low carbon programme, where we were measuring from the audits and the grants that were funded through SPF funding, how much each individual business was able to decarbonise. We'll feed that into the decarbonisation plan. And like I said, that plan is not just taking on board the low carbon project. That is just one example. There will be other examples that businesses themselves have done that the plan will be able to identify and show. On the low carbon grants and businesses not owning their buildings, that has been an issue for that grant programme. I completely agree, and that's why, you know, we'll take that sort of information on board for the plan as well, for the final plan. So I agree that that is an issue, but in order for the grant to be appropriate and to have longevity, there has to be eligibility requirements around that. So that is an unfortunate thing that that has to be taken into account for a grant programme. On the transport networks, I think that's probably something that will come out of the local area energy plan rather than something that would be taken into account for the business decarbonisation route map work, purely because it's not something that it does affect the individual business, but it's not something that a business per se can do themselves, which is very much what the decarbonisation route map is about. So hopefully the local area energy plan will look at transport networks. Innovation in green skills. I think I would need to take that question and ask my employment and skills colleagues who are not in the room now. I'm sorry, I don't know in terms of the identification of skills. That does sit with the universities and with Sheffield College as well, but I would need to be able to speak to them to get a more detailed response, sorry.
Yeah, I said green technologies because that's the wording used in the document.
Yes.
You know, and we know there's emerging technologies. But I don't know what all of them are. And so green skills is the typical ones are sort of anything like, you know, upskilling plumbers, electricians, sort of insulations, and, you know, sort of basic engineering efficiency. But I don't know about that technology, which is rather different. So this is what I've been asking for the information on for a couple of years now. Okay. Nobody has been able to define that yet.
There is quite a large piece of work with our employment and skills colleagues who are working with their education partners to look at green technology. So I can take that question back, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you for that, if you would. Councillor Burek.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks both. I just wanted to pick up on, so the report mentions that the feedback from the steering group was to prioritise actions in terms of their impact on decarbonisation, but also recognising that there might be a declining appetite because of competing issues. I feel like the low carbon grants is a route forward through this. It's something that's about decarbonisation, but also delivers those wider benefits as well of cutting bills, which I think is where we need to be in terms of climate action. I guess it was really great to see the low carbon grants and the success that they've been. I know Henry is one of the recipients, and I've spoken to many in my ward as well, and I think they're a really great success story, and I think it's that kind of measure that we really should be pushing and promoting, as we know the economic context is difficult for our businesses, particularly small businesses, but this is a way we can materially help them, as well as, you know, meeting our net zero ambitions as well. And I guess I don't know if that's a question actually. I guess I had a question about skills as well though. Is there something more we can do about skills funding and the skills funding we get from Simca that we deploy outwards, and how that can map onto our green transition? How can we prioritise local businesses and, you know, potentially larger businesses to skill up and build the green skills across our local economy to meet that transition? And can we do that more? I guess, how actively are we deploying skills funding to get certain outcomes, or is it we get funding and we distribute it and then we're also having these ambitions? This question about join up, I guess, is the simpler way to ask it.
So just on the first point about low carbon grants, completely agree. I think they're incredibly useful, and I think that's been proven through the programme. I suppose the only point to say is that we have seen less interest in the current round from businesses, because the return on investment for them to do things like solar panels, for example, is a longer period than previously. So when they're looking at a number of different things in the business, do you know what I mean? The return on investment sometimes, for example, if they were looking at a productivity grant, that might be a quicker return on investment. What we have definitely seen now in this current round is businesses who have previously had a grant, who have started on the journey and seen the benefits, looking to do that next stage of decarbonisation, which I think is really helpful. National government have done a pilot scheme which is very similar to the low carbon grant and audits that we run in the region, and that's in West Midlands. So I think there'll be some research and evaluation from that programme as well. But if we could, if we're able to secure SPF or you know, transitional funding, then absolutely low carbon grants is a priority for us going forward. On the skills question, I'm just looking for Ben to support.
Where's Laura? I think just in terms of the low carbon grant programme, Yvonne's exactly right. There has been that decline. I think we need to also think about, is it now time to maybe slightly tweak that scheme? Do we want to target larger businesses who can make a bigger impact in terms of carbon? That might mean a fewer number of larger grants, but obviously with the business investing alongside, we're not providing 100% grants, it's only a proportion. So that's something we need to think about going forward, obviously subject to having funding available, which is a big issue.
I guess if I can add an addition to that, I guess we've got organisations in the city like Sheffield Renewables which do have a crowdsourcing role in getting solar panels on community buildings. I wonder if there is some join up there of, if we could, through the low carbon grants, give some money and work with someone like Sheffield Renewables or, you know, Energise Barnsley, where it might lead to a different model of ownership, because it wouldn't be the businesses owning the solar panels, but they would still see that direct reduction in their energy costs, and it, you know, leverages in, it helps grow Sheffield Renewables or someone else. Is that an avenue that could be explored?
It's certainly not an avenue that we have looked at all, but that is something that we can do, yes.
I mean, I think likewise is the focus tends to be on the building, like solar panels, but maybe there's a change of focus, and it relates to the productivity grants actually, but how do we get businesses to be far more efficient in terms of their processes and the type of equipment they use? So there's things to explore, but I think as Yvonne said, actually decarbonisation of our business remains a priority and something we want to support, subject to funding being available. In terms of a skills element, definitely not my area, but I'll just refer to, you know, recent things coming out from government. They are intending to put a significant amount of funding into, I don't like the term green skills, generally, because when you talk about retrofitting housing, for example, that's going to be a huge area of investment. It is about bringing plumbers, electricians, etc. up to date with the skills which you need to fit solar panels, to deal with new heating systems, etc. they're not new jobs, they're just updating skills which many already have, or introducing new people into that area of employment, which is definitely an area which has got a huge area of growth attached to it. And in terms of the new innovative businesses or sectors, I would say, that's certainly something where we're working with Simca on. Their growth plan for the region identifies green energy as a potential strength for the region, whether that's in hydrogen, for example, looking at battery storage areas. So these are areas which are under development. I'm certainly no expert in these, but it's something which, if we feel that we can present something, if committee wants some more information on it, might be something we can get the combined authority to talk about at a regional level, because it's not just the Sheffield area, which I think is where we'd want to focus on.
Thank you so much for that, Councillor Ulla.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, as Councillor Parrick mentioned it, I think for the avoidance of any suggestion of a conflict of interest or anything, my business didn't receive any direct support as a result of the low carbon. It had an audit, and the result of the audit was that if that building was a horse, you would take it outside and shoot it. We disconnected our gas supply and bought coats, but the council didn't pay for the coats. Anyway, that wasn't going to be my question. Very much it's carrot-led at the moment, and the incentive for businesses is generally reduction in cost. As a local authority, we do have some small levers that are more stick-related in terms of enforcement against breaches of primarily air pollution, if you're talking about carbon reduction. Is that something that's been mentioned or looked at by Arab?
No, not at this stage, Henry, it isn't, no. I will mention that though, thank you.
I have no objection to carrot first, it is the right approach.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the clarification, Councillor Nottage. Councillor Ulla, and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Yvonne, for the update. I really welcome this update. It shows that we're still committed to climate action, particularly in a context where a lot of people who are climate change deniers are getting a lot of airtime at the moment. So it shows that Council and City are still committed to taking action to reduce our greenhouse gases. I've always called to work closely with businesses, to almost co-produce this route map with businesses so that they are more likely, well, it's going to be realistic, it's going to be practical, and more likely to adopt it. Are there any, speaking about adoption, are there any plans to showcase success stories from early adopters to encourage others to follow suit? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's part of the engagement strategy, really. The only way I think we can bring groups of businesses together to talk about the decarbonisation plan, which could sound quite boring and not a priority for a business to attend a consultation event, then we will use the ability to be able to talk to other businesses about what they have done in that consultation process. That will also then be a part of the final route map to sort of bring to life a number of different examples of different business sizes as well in terms of their decarbonisation journey and at different stages as well. So yes, very much part of the consultation.
Thank you very much. Just to bring it to everybody's attention, we've got 20 minutes left and then I have to officially stop this.
Or extend it.
Or extend it. So, question from Barbara.
Thank you. You prompted me, Ben, because you mentioned sort of battery storage. And who is actually checking that we've got, we'll have an electricity supply to fund all these changes that are coming about, especially when the government is trying to sort of roll out AI, and we know the huge demand for electricity for AI. So I'd just like some assurance that somebody's keeping an eye on the grid.
I think that will come through the local area energy plan. So that's a strategic framework developed by local authorities to guide how a region transitions to net zero energy systems. So I think that will be included in that plan, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think there's no further questions. I'll bring this to an end. And is everybody agreed with the recommendation? We're all agreed with the recommendation. Thank you very much, Yvonne and Ben. We move on to the final item. And we have got 19 minutes, Jane. just need a brief overview on this one, because I think it's been to nearly every committee, hasn't it? So it's just a matter of information for this committee as well.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jane Wilby. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance and Accounting, and I'm here to present the 25-26 Q1 financial position. The report that you have is a copy of the paper that was presented to the Finance and Performance Committee on the 18th of August and has been shared with each policy committee throughout September, but due to the scheduling, it's only been possible to bring forward to the committee today, this month. So we're almost a quarter behind, and my team have now closed the Q2 position, and the reporting will come forward for that in December. It is important to maintain this reporting discipline to ensure transparency, strengthen governance, and to enable accountable decision-making across all areas of the Council. The format of the report has changed slightly this year, with some more visual reporting in the appendix, where you can find further information on the committee-specific budget areas. At Q1, the Council's forecasting a general fund overspend of 28.2 million, driven primarily by persistent demand pressures in adult social care and children's social care, SEN transport and homelessness, alongside the pressures that we face in the dedicated schools grant and the housing revenue account. To partially offset this, 22.8 million of corporate mitigations have been released into the outturn position, including 7.9 million for housing benefit subsidy loss provision, 5.1 million for high cost placement growth and 9.8 million from the 24-25 collection fund surplus. The report covers some of the targeted recovery actions that are in place. The Council's launched a series of service level recovery programmes and corporate measures to reduce the overspend, and these include in adult social care efficiency reforms are being led by the Chief Exec through the Adult Social Care Improvement Board. In children's, they are reviewing care placements, investing in in-house provisions and improving home-to-school transport. And in housing, continuing to reduce temporary accommodation costs and minimising bed and breakfast by accelerating permanent housing transitions. At the end of Q1, the Economic Development and Skills and Culture Committee is forecasting a balanced position against the net revenue budget of 11.8 million for the current financial year, indicating a solid start. The committee's largest areas of expenditure remain under close review, and a significant proportion of activity is externally funded, particularly within family, community learning and employment and skills. Plans are in place to ensure that full utilisation of grant funding happens, supported by scheduled review points throughout the year to maintain alignment with available resources. As you've heard today, the services continue to focus on maximising income opportunities and are actively exploring additional funding streams through partnerships and regional bodies, including SIMCA, to strengthen our financial resilience. While there's an acknowledgement of risk related to the UK SPF allocations, mitigations have been identified and are in place to manage any shortfalls. Continued monitoring and proactive engagement with partners, funding partners, will be essential to maintain that positive trajectory and deliver on our planned objectives. So in response to the overall financial position, the Council's introduced organisation-wide spending controls, which include a 6-month recruitment restriction, which is expected to save 6 million, and a further 3 million from vacancy factor budgeting. We also introduced discretionary spend restrictions with some centralised monitoring processes in place. And both these recruitment and discretionary spend measures have clear exemption criteria in place to ensure that a pragmatic approach is taken when managing these controls. We anticipated with these corporate measures in place and the targeted things and services, we can drive the overspend down to a position of under 20 million by the end of the year. Finance teams are actively monitoring and driving these targets with services. The measures are coordinated across various governance forums, including the Future Sheffield Board, Performance and Delivery Board, Budget Improvement Group, and this is ensuring strategic alignment and accountability across all areas. Amid ongoing financial pressures, the Future Sheffield Transformation Programme plays a critical role in reshaping our council services to deliver greater efficiency and long-term financial stability. It's important to recognise that these pressures are not unique to Sheffield, and we're actively engaging with national consultations on funding reform, and we welcome the government's commitment to a 3-year local government finance settlement from 26-27. The longer-term funding horizon will enable us to plan our budget strategy with greater confidence, particularly in contrast to the current approach, where annual allocations are only confirmed in December, just before the financial year begins. We expect to receive further detail from government in November, which will be critical in shaping our future planning. While the position is challenging, hopefully the report demonstrates that the Council is responding with urgency and focus. The next quarter's update will be presented to the Finance and Performance Committee in November and all policy committees in December. I'm happy to take any questions on the overall position or on the committee budgets in specifically if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And the first question from Councillor Parek.
Thank you, Jane, for that update. While it's obviously a very tricky position across the council as a whole, it's really pleasing to see such, a well-managed budget from the economic development team, that there's no variance. And just thank you to the officers for their continued work. And I know colleagues across the council will be having a much more difficult job than we are in this committee. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? I'd just like to say, Jane, thank you so much for presenting that. My concerns have been noted previously at SNR as well, which is around the fact that this area of work obviously attracts businesses into the city and investment into the city, and we don't want an impact on that via the vacancy freeze. So I know we're taking each vacancy individually and checking whether we really need to recruit to it or not. But I don't want to close the door on businesses in Sheffield, and I think that's been noted in SNR before, and I'm just reiterating that. So thank you very much for presenting the report. And I think that brings us to the end of the committee. Thank you very much. It's been a very busy committee, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.